So I want to start with a little bit of it should be a very easy quiz for you all this morning. And see how you all do. So I'm going to pull out some objects, and all you have to do is tell me what they are and what they're used for. That's simple. Can y'all do that? Okay, let's see how we do. All right, so here's the first one. What is this? No, this. Look at it. Hair dryer?
It's a blower of some kind.
No. Okay, that's okay. We've got 3 other options. Y'all didn't get that one. Let's try again. Okay. What is this thing? Can y'all see that?
It looks like a skewer.
Skewer? No. Okay, y'all got one last chance. Y'all not done too well on this one. Okay, one more. What is this? No, well, y'all didn't get a single one of these. Okay. I thought this would be easy, but apparently it's not. Let me tell you what they actually are, but in order to do that, I have to tell you a story first. And then y'all can correct you about what these tools actually are. So last weekend, well, it's been going on for a while, and last weekend we finally decided that we could fix it ourselves. So, and if y'all know anything about me and Anthony, y'all know that this is already the start of a bad story. So our refrigerator, we have one of those pull-out freezer drawers, and it kept leaking water. So anyway, and I would open it up, and there was, in the back panel, there's some water that was like frozen and was defrosting and coming down. So I thought, well, maybe we'll have someone come out and do it, but it's the week before Thanksgiving, that wasn't happening. I didn't want to leave town with there being water on the floor. So finally, last weekend, I said, Anthony, we've got to just fix it ourselves. And so we did what, every professional does, which is YouTube it. And you go on YouTube, and they say, oh, this is like the easiest thing to fix. It's just all you have to do is take off the back panel, and there's some little drain in there that's been frozen over, and you just got to defrost it and, get it going again. And then you put everything back, and it's like that simple. It was like a little 1-minute video. That's all you have to do. So here we go. We set out to do it. Neither of us, I think Anthony would agree, neither of us have any really practical, technical skills. Franz and I always like to tell Franz that when I was in the Catholic seminary, we had this phrase where if you were forced to do manual labor, you would say, these hands are meant for chalices, not calluses. So I've lived that out a little bit, probably more than I should have. But anyway, we were told it's so easy. Of course, it's not easy. They said, oh, you just have to remove the back panel. Well, you have to remove the door, and you have to take that off, and you have to remove the ice machine, and you have to remove all the drawers, and you have to remove this thing that's over here, and this thing that's over here. So about 2 hours later, we finally just get to the thing, and then we've got to figure out how to defrost it. So what you mistook as a hairdryer was actually a defroster. That is its proper function. To sit there for hours, defrosting all of these panels that were in the back. What you mistook as a skewer is actually a little thing to kind of like pick at the ice that was so far down in this drain that even the hairdryer couldn't get to it. And what you mistook as a baster was actually a water extraction unit, right? To remove the water that was being defrosted. Anyway, we got it fixed, but it did take quite a while, and it took some ingenuity because we had nothing on hand, of course. All we had was like a little toolkit. For the longest time, the only toolkit I had in my house was my mother's toolkit that she got when she was married. That was quite literally pink, and it had like 3 tools in it. Okay, this is the 80s. It was pink, had 3 tools in it, and on the top of it was labeled ladies toolkit. I used that thing for years. Anyway, I've graduated up to like maybe above a ladies toolkit, whatever that means. But even still, I had to find all of these other utensils and things and kind of figure it out to get this refrigerator fixed. And my point is that a tool is not so much a sort of static definition. A tool is defined by whatever purpose you give to it, which means its purpose and its sort of definition can change. It's not a hairdryer forever if you give it a new purpose. It now becomes a new thing. And so I'm thinking about that today with our readings in Advent and about the start of Advent in general. Because here's one of my problems with Advent, or maybe one of my problems with the ways that we talk about Advent, is that it is a season of preparation. I think that's just sort of an easy way of talking about it. But sometimes what I hear in that preparation is maybe not exactly correct, or might not be what we want to talk about Advent as. Because for one, don't we have enough to prepare for? Is the way that I think about it. It's like, this is already such a busy season. And then for us in the church to sort of lay on top of that, this pressure that somehow we have to prepare. We have to somehow get our houses ready, our spiritual houses ready. Maybe there are some spiritual gifts that we need to collect, that we need to go shopping for in order to make our souls, as we sometimes say, well, to prepare your hearts for the coming King. Which is all very sweet, don't get me wrong. But I guess my caution is that leads us down a path where we start thinking that in order to prepare for Christmas, in order to prepare for Jesus' entry into our lives, we have a to-do list to do first. We've got to collect the right tools, right? If you just have the ladies' toolkit, that's not good enough. You need to get the better tools, right? This is sort of I hear in that the underlying and problematic message when we talk about preparation. And so I'm going to propose that Advent is not a season of preparation. And here's why. In our reading today from the Gospel of Matthew, I think one of the things Jesus is trying to get at by telling us that the time and the place, that unexpected hour in which God comes to us is not so much the problem. Right? I mean, he's saying that this is not something anyone will be able to know, nor, therefore, will you be able to prepare for it. However, I like that Jesus adds a little detail to the story of Noah that actually isn't in the story of Noah. He's sort of kind of adding to the story a little bit. He's adding some detail. He's adding some imagination. And he says, in the days of Noah, while Noah was preparing and getting this boat ready for the flood, everyone else was, spending their time elseways. They were marrying and giving in marriage. They were feasting and drinking and having fun and partying and enjoying their lives. They had the exact amount of time that Noah had to prepare. We too, I think, have the time and the resources and the tools and all of the things that we need already at our disposal for Advent. It's not a matter of gathering a bunch of objects or gathering a bunch of spiritual skills or gathering a bunch of enlightenment for Christmas. I think the key is given to us today in Isaiah. The real objective of Advent is a kind of repurposing. Today in the prophet Isaiah, it says that the people in this coming age, in this day of a new covenant, of a new revelation, of the Lord's salvation, it says in that day they will take their swords and their spears and they will repurpose them into gardening implements, into tools that have a different purpose. The people of Israel, just like the people of Noah's day that Jesus is referring to, they were prepared. They had all of the things that they needed. They had all of the tools. They had tools of war. They had tools of partying. The problem was that their time and their tools were not sort of calibrated to the correct purpose. They were calibrated for a different purpose than what God was revealing to them was the primary objective and purpose of their life and of all of their tools and of all of their time and of all of their gifts. The Israelites were well prepared. They had all these implements of swords and spears and shields and armors. They were prepared. They had all of that already on hand. They had a kitchen full of odds and ends. But when God's purpose is revealed, they don't have to go out and buy new things, which is kind of the Advent, Christmas sort of secular idea, right? Is that in order to prepare for the celebration of Christmas, we usually have to buy something in order to get there. The message of the Israelites being able to take their implements of war and give them new meaning is a reminder to us that they didn't actually have to go out and buy anything new to live out this new purpose. This new purpose was given to them to say, this is the new season that you're living in. This is the goal that God is bringing you towards. And now you can just take everything that you've already been doing and everything you've already been pouring your money and your time and your energy into and just give it a new purpose. And so I like to imagine, actually, when I hear those words of Isaiah of turning spears into pruning hooks, that they actually don't do anything different with them. You might have in your mind that this is the prophet and he's talking about the Israelites and they're sort of doing some metalworking and sort of reshaping the spears. I have in my mind that they're not actually doing that. I just imagine Israelites out there with spears with the tree, just sort of like hacking at the tree. Just like I was trying to, hack at the fridge with a skewer. This is what I imagine. That even without any modification, the tools, the spiritual tools, the wisdom, the spiritual wisdom that we already have doesn't need to be modified. It just needs to be given a new job, a new purpose. And this is also why, coming back a little bit, why preparation, I think, is not the right word for Advent. Here's the good news in all of this, is that in order to know what you're to do with the tools that you've been given, you do have to have the goal in mind. You do need to have God's revelation to you saying, here is your purpose. Use your tools accordingly. And that's the age that we live in, right? The age that we're hearing about in Matthew's gospel and in Isaiah, those first hearers, they're maybe not have the gift of foresight like we do. But there is no preparing for Jesus to enter the world. That is not Advent's purpose for us Christian people. That already has happened. Okay, so we don't have to do that. So that's why for us as Christian people, the objective is not preparing your heart, whatever that means, or preparing your soul to somehow receive God's grace or receive God's incarnation. That's already happening. So if you feel like you're not prepared, well, I've got kind of bad news for you. The time is upon you. So even if you wanted to prepare, you cannot prepare. You are now living in the season where God is already made flesh and is incarnate and is continually incarnate in your daily life. That's, again, why we do communion. It's a reminder that God is enfleshed. God is present in bread and wine in the presence of this community. There is nothing left for you to prepare for. So if Advent is about preparation, the Christian Advent is about recalibration. We already know what the purpose of our life is. This is not some mystery like Jesus is talking about in Matthew. Even Jesus says about his purpose, right? That he knows he comes from God and will go to God. Or comes from the Father and will return to the Father. This is our purpose. Our purpose is to live lives of freedom. To live lives liberated from sin and from oppression and from hatred and from war and from violence and from selfishness. So we don't have to do a lot of buying things or collecting things in the spiritual life, but just a matter of adjusting, taking what you already have. This is the gift that we who live in this Christian age get to experience, that those who have come before us in the age of the prophets and of the patriarchs in the Hebrew Bible, they didn't get to quite taste until the resurrection. But we do. And so my invitation for us in this Advent season is, if you're feeling like on top of getting your house ready or getting your family ready for celebrating Christmas, that also on top of Advent is layering on top of you now an obligation to somehow prepare your soul and your heart and your mind to be pure, to be readied, to be enlightened for Jesus' coming, I would say, get with the times. You're in this age. You're in the age of Jesus is already breaking into. Your objective is now to ask the question that Jesus is posing to his disciples about the days of Noah. You know what your purpose is. You know who you are. Is everything in your life calibrated, repurposed for this greater mission? The things in your life that you might not think even have a purpose. I think about, I always think about that Advent hymn about setting the hearth and trimming what's that one? I'm looking at Mary. Trimming the table, setting the hearth, anyway. And I like that image that they are giving this image of preparing a home, right? And here's my point, of preparing a home for Christmas. But I would say preparing a home for Christmas or for Jesus' coming or whatever is much less like decorating a house as it is taking a room that you never go into or a part of your yard that you never use or something that you put up in the closet and is collecting dust and actually using it for a different purpose. Maybe even using it for a kingdom purpose. Maybe there truly is a room that you are just shoving a bunch of stuff that has no purpose. Maybe it is a place to welcome guests. Maybe it is a place for prayer or for study. Maybe it is a new craft room for you to do some sort of project or activity that is bringing cheer and art and beauty to the world. All of these things that we leave in our lives that are just sort of unused, unpurposed, just sitting in a drawer. And we think they only have one purpose. This only has one purpose. But the imagination of the God incarnate is that everything in our life can be repurposed for something else. A car could just be something that gets you to and from work and to and from the grocery store, or it could be something that brings meals to people who are shut in. We have out in our own, we talk about it all the time, but I bring it up again, we have our pocket prairie, which is we can just have land that serves the purpose of being mowed, or you can give it a purpose that is more kingdom-bound, more heaven-bound, a purpose of proclaiming our own care for creation. And on that note, this is maybe a little too on the nose, but here I'm talking about repurposing, and in a season where we are pressured to buy things, maybe things just need to be repurposed. Gifts could just be repurposed. Wrapping paper, whether you know it or not, can be made out of normal paper that you've already used. It doesn't have to be that foily, expensive stuff that I don't know how to actually put together anyway. So you could just put it in a Walmart bag, but as you can tell, I'm not very popular with the people I give gifts to. But you see my point is that you can talk about that in the sort of physical life, but you can also talk about it in the spiritual life. Your time, your spiritual gifts, your talents, your words, your attention. To take stock in this season, not to figure out what are you lacking, but to figure out, is there something in my life, even a time of the day, my emotional energy that I'm spending on something that really could be used for a better purpose? I think that's the true heart of Advent preparation, is that this good news and reminder that we are not living in a day where we are lacking anything. God has already given us all of the grace, and more importantly, God has already given us the thing that we need most, which is direction. A reminder of our direction. This is where the psalm is talking today about. They said, let us go to the house of the Lord. And that alone would be the point of rejoicing for this psalm. Just a sense of direction. And that once we have that calibrated in our lives, no modification or shopping is needed. Because we remember that we are preparing for a God who is not asking of us to trim the hearth and set the table, to decorate a bunch of things, to go out and buy a bunch of things. Our God is a God who is perfectly satisfied with a manger that is repurposed to be a throne. And no longer is that thing. The tools, the gifts, the time of our lives that we are spending has a flexible definition. Just as that manger now becomes a throne because it's been given a new purpose, this Advent season is a time in which everything that God has given you can be repurposed to be something new. Amen.